All right, I guess we might as well get started. Now let me see. I'm not sure where we actually ended off, so why don't we start off by just opening up WAMP right off the get-go, and we'll take a look at where we ended. Unfortunately, all three classes are way out of sync with each other, so I have no idea where we are. So we'll have to see. I think you guys might be the furthest ahead, so Andre, you might actually be a little bit further ahead than you need to be, but I did put the last spot where we ended files up so that you do have access to those files, okay? All right, let me take a look here. So if we go to our local host comp-1006, and we'll navigate there and see where we're at. So we're just going to still work from the lesson 5 Tuesday directory anyways. I see a blog and I see blogs. Does that seem familiar? Okay. So yeah, we are ahead. Okay. So if you don't have this blog piece, which you probably don't because you weren't here last week, if you go to the lesson 6 folder, you can download this directory, and I'll walk you through it. You know what? I'll walk you through it. Be nice and be very nice. All right, so we'll download this directory. Click Show in Folder for us. We'll go ahead and extract all. And something I learned, if you get rid of this Lesson 5 Tuesday part and just let it extract directly to downloads, it doesn't create a folder within a folder, which makes it a little bit easier to deal with because there's all our files now just in that folder. Now it's called Lesson 5-2. We don't want it that way. So if you just go into it, just double click on it so that you can get inside, highlight all of the contents, and then just hit Control-C to copy them. And we'll just paste them in a Lesson 5 directory. All right, I'm going to put this over here. I'm going to take another Finder window. I'm going to go to Comp1006 where I have my quick access, or however you navigate to that Comp1006 directory, just make sure it's the one being served by Apache, which you should all remember. I mean, if you forget, the easiest way to get there is to click on the W and click the www directory because it will take you directly there. I'm going to click on my Lesson 5 folder, and if I don't have one, I will create one. So if you don't have a Lesson 5 folder, create one. You should, though, I think. I think everybody does. I'm going to hit Control-A to select all of the files in there. And then I'm going to hit delete and remove everything that's inside there. So now it's completely empty. And then I'm going to hit Control-V, which will paste all the files that I had from the downloads directory. You'll know it's correct and that you've done the right thing if you have a posts directory in there. If you're missing the post directory, then you did something wrong. And that's step 1 of 2. The second step is for us to blow out our database and change it out with a new database. Those of you that were here last week know why we did that, because we had the wrong engine, wasn't supporting relationships. Andre says, fuck it, he's leaving. Yeah, don't worry, we'll start off where we ended off tomorrow. We'll be fine. You'll be fine. No. I did record the lesson, though, for that. So if you watch the recorded lesson, you should be okay. Okay. All right. All right, so we have that. So the last step is to update the database. So if you go to localhost/phpMyAdmin, log into phpMyAdmin, click on Comp1006, click on Import, click Choose File, navigate to your Lesson 5 directory. This new comp_1006 SQL is what you want. Pull it in and click Go. And that will overwrite everything else. Now, those of you that were here last week, click Comp1006, go to Lesson 5 on the weekly learning. Sorry, I think it's Lesson 6 actually under weekly learning. And I'm going to give you a new database file. So give me 1 second just to edit it, because we're going to have an issue. I forgot to put an extra piece in there that we need. Shoot. That's not even the correct lesson 6. This is the thing that I want. New DB with cascades. We need these cascades. Submit. Okay, that's the database we need. So click on that and pull it down. 6. Lesson 6. Yeah, with cascades. Let me just make sure that is what I think it is. That did not help at all. Come to the very bottom. Yes, on delete cascade. So we're actually going to replace the database we added last week with this new database, because I forgot to add these on deletes, and I thought I could do it afterwards, but it turns out you can't. So if you create foreign key constraints, super, super important that you remember that when you create the constraint, you add the on delete cascade. Otherwise, you'll have to delete the constraint and re-add it. It's not like something you can just modify later. It's one of the few things in SQL you can't like just modify at a different point. Yeah.
So with this new SQL, do we replace that, our old SQL file, in the lesson file?
Yeah, you might as well. That way it's there and you have it. Yeah. Yeah, replace the one that's in that directory, the lesson 5 directory. That way you have that file and you don't wind. That way if you have to load it again, you're not loading the wrong one, right? So just make sure you replace that. I'll even do the same thing actually. So I'll copy it. And I'll go to my lesson 5 file and I'll paste it in there. And mine's got a different name, so I'm going to delete this one and just rename it. There, now it's in there. Okay, so now let's go back to localhost, PHP and bin. Click on the comp1006 directory. Click import. Choose our file. And if you copied and pasted it into lesson 5, then just go there. Otherwise, take it from your downloads. Double click it. Scroll to the bottom. Click go. And that will actually drop your databases and then recreate them. Sorry, it drops the tables, recreates them, and then adds the new foreign key constraints with the cascades on it. Which you can actually see if you look through this thing, it shows you everything it's doing. And if you go towards the bottom, you'll see where it says constraints for dumped table, constraints tables, alter table comments, add constraints, foreign key, references, post, add constraint, foreign key, blah, blah, blah. Actually, it doesn't look like it added the, did I goof up and select the wrong one? That totally seems like something I would do. Oh, I did, didn't I? No, got on delete cascades. I hope that worked. Well, we'll find out soon enough if it didn't.
So then in our Visual Studio Code, do we have to change?
No.
No?
No, you don't change anything.
So I have in my files comp_1006 SQL filled with errors, and it says 9+ beside it.
Where? At the top? It's going to be filled with errors because you don't have parsers. Yeah, it's because you don't have a parser.
Okay.
And the 9+ is the number of changes you've made. Okay. Yeah. So it's because VS Code tries to marry Git really closely, and so it will show you the number of changes you've made between the last time you edited the file to this time, which is kind of handy, but works better when you actually have Git. All right. Now that I've done all that, I'm ready to open up my lesson 5 folder inside my IDE. You guys all know how to do that at this point, so I'm not going to handhold on that one. Instead, I'm just going to open it the way I open it, which is I right-click on it and choose to open with code, which makes my life so much easier. Yours may not do that unless you set it up to do that when you installed VS Code. All right, and if everything is good, nothing should really have changed, at least not visually. Nothing should have changed. Now, I don't remember how far we got. Did we actually get to the show page? Oh, we didn't. Cool. So that's where we are at. We are at the show page. So last week we talked quite a bit about relationships, not like in a weird way. We talked about relationships with database tables. We explored this little map. So this map here is basically our child-parent relationships that we have. So we have our users table, and for one user, a user can have many posts or a user can have many comments, right? So that's that parent-child relationship. A post can have many comments, another parent-child relationship. And obviously we're doing this because, well, one, you guys need to know about parent-child relationships for your projects. That's probably the most important reason. And then the second reason is because parent-child relationships is something you're going to be dealing with quite often when you're working with applications, especially with a relational database. That being said, it doesn't really change. A lot of people think like, okay, well, when I take JavaScript and we're going to be using Mongo, which is a NoSQL database, so it doesn't use a relational database. A lot of people think, cool, no more relationships, just everything goes in. No, that is not what happens. You just have to manage relationships in a different way. It's just a little bit more loose than the strict SQL databases are. But you will always have relationships. You'll always have this parent-child kind of relationship. You get some pretty complex relationships as well that require something called a pivot table. So in your relational database class, from what I can gather, you guys have learned about a one-to-one table, right? Which is where, sorry, no, you've learned one-to-many, right? That's the most common one, where a user will have many of something. Did you guys learn about one-to-one, where one record will be pointed to another record directly, and that's it? I think you did, actually, because you guys learned about employees being mapped to another employee as their parent. Who had Andrew? Yeah. So if I believe that's what Andrew taught you, that's a one-to-one, right? Because that employee can only have one other. No, that's a one-to-many, isn't it? That's a one-to-many because that other employee can own a whole bunch of them. So you guys haven't done one-to-one. One-to-one's rare because it doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? Usually if you're doing one-to-one, the only reason you're doing that is to create a subset of data that you don't want inside this other table because it will just slow everything down, right? So for example, I don't always need the user's address, so I might create an addresses table and only do a one-to-one relationship to the table. That way I don't need that data when I don't need it, right? The other one, and this one's really complex, is a many-to-many. Have you guys done a many-to-many? So many-to-manys are annoying. A many-to-many requires you to have this thing in the middle called a pivot table, which is basically how you manage your many-to-many relationship. It's a map that basically says the ID from this table maps to the ID from this table. And it just populates this whole map list of all these different IDs that point to each other. That's a many-to-many. So it is unfortunate that you guys haven't learned that this semester in your relational database. Do you guys get another relational database class after this one? Okay, so hopefully they teach you about one-to-one and many-to-many because those are very important concepts to know. You will definitely write a pivot table at some point in your career, which hopefully you've learned about it prior to that. Yeah. All right, so we're only going to concern ourselves with a one-to-many, but we have multiple one-to-many relationships here. One user can have many comments. One user can have many posts. One post can have many comments, right? So we have 3 parent-child relationships, which is totally fine. In our actual page, we brought in our user, right? So here's our user, Kathleen, is that Kaylee? Kaylee Collier. And Kaylee Collier has written this blog. But however, the blog didn't actually have the user in it. When we started out, it had a reference to the user, it had a reference to their user ID. So what we did was we joined them, right? And what a join does is it takes the content from one table and merges it with the content of another table based on some sort of criteria that you provided, right? So I'm not sure if I explained this last week. We were talking about it actually at work today because I thought it was kind of interesting and many people don't actually know this. I'm going to open up the posts index.php table or PHP page. And we're going to look at this query that we have here. Our select star, post ID as ID, post updated at. Those are, does anybody remember what those are? Why we created those? And what they actually are? Yeah, they're aliases. And why did we create them? Kind of a better user experience. Does anybody else know why? What happens when we merge two tables together? So say I have an ID column in posts and I have an ID column in users. What happens? Exactly. The ID column in posts gets overridden by the ID column from users, which means now things don't match up correctly. Because we already have a user underscore ID column in posts, we're basically blowing away that merge and resetting it back so that the ID is actually the post ID. And then we're doing the same thing with updated at, but the only reason why we're doing it with updated at is because it makes sense that the blog date be the last date that the blog was actually updated or modified, right? So that's why we did that. Other than that, this is the next piece of magic we wrote. This piece of magic basically takes our users table, merges it in row by row with our posts, based on the fact that these two fields are equal to each other. So here's the thing that might blow your mind a little bit. One, joins don't rely on foreign constraints. So the foreign keys that we create actually have nothing to do with joins whatsoever. The reason why we create foreign keys is to maintain stable data. Because what can happen, a person, if they were to go along and delete the user and not delete all the posts that relate to that user or connected to that user, and not really delete all the comments that related to that user, they would wind up creating a ton of orphan data, which is basically just data that has no parent, right? And then there's no way to get rid of that data at a later point because it's very unlikely that you're pulling that data in a nice atomic way, right? So it would be very difficult for you to get rid of later. What foreign constraints do is they basically say, no, you can't orphan that data. You're not allowed. You must go delete every child before you delete the parent. So that on delete cascade that we added in our database will actually do that cleanup for us. So if I delete a user, it's literally going to go find every single post related to the user, remove every single comment related to each one of those posts, and then it's going to also find every single comment that that user created in the database and remove everything at once without us having to do any work. And you kind of want the database to take care of that cleanup because the database is much faster at it than PHP is. So much faster. So on delete cascade is super important. So that's one thing. Foreign keys and joins are unrelated. Well, they're related to relationships, but the two don't rely on each other. You don't actually need to have foreign keys in your database at all. In fact, there's a whole database engine that we just changed from, which is the MySAM engine, that doesn't even support relationships, right? Joins, you can do all the time. Here's the other kicker. This is a comparison operator in MySQL, right? So what this is basically saying is post.userid is equal to users.id. It's a question more, right? It's not an assignment. Because it is comparison operator, you can actually get real tricky and sneaky with your joins. And you can be like, give me all post.userids that are greater, join all users whose created at date is greater than yesterday. And it will return back only those and create the connection. So you can actually modify that statement, or you can even actually add a nested select statement in there as well and get real sneaky with MySQL. MySQL is a very interesting language, and you can get lost in it pretty bad, but it is cool. Did you guys learn about nested select statements? Yeah, cool. Did you know that you can actually take a nested select statement and use it as a where clause? Yeah, and then you can also use it as a join clause. You can literally put it wherever the heck you want. You can actually put a nested select statement right here and have it return the fields you want based on whatever conditions you did in your select statement. So yeah, there's a lot of power to MySQL. Okay, obviously that's not a huge amount of relevance to what we're doing, just thought you should know. So let's do showing a single post, because right now we don't have that. When we click on one of these, either this link or the read more link, it takes us to a not found page, which means the file does not exist, right? That's all it means. It's a 404. 404 means not found. So we're going to go to our IDE. We're going to open up our sidebar, and I'm going to close all of these editors that I have open right now, so that all we have is this sidebar. And I'm going to, under post, create a brand new file. Now I'll show you something interesting I found the other day. See this little like two squares that are stacked on top of each other with a minus sign? If you click it, it collapses everything, which is really handy when you're trying to like kind of figure where things are. So now I'm going to go to post. I'm going to click this arrow. So now I can see my index file. I'm going to right click on post and choose new file. This one's going to be called show.php. Like every PHP file we create, our first line will be to include which file. Does anybody remember? // underscore starts with a C. That's right, config. The reason why we include the config file is because it's what gives us all of our helpers, which we want, right? And it gives us our normalized paths. So the root path and the base path, which are two very important pieces of data we need, because it helps us to create absolute paths instead of relative paths. So once we have our config, we can go ahead and we're going to create another PHP block. And you don't need to do this. You could just write it as one large PHP block. I don't know why I like separating it. I actually have no valid reason. I like the way it looks. All right, so we are going to get the requested post. So just like a user, right? When we go to the users table and we click on one of the users, it takes us to the show page. How do we get that unique user? Where do we get the, what's the word I'm looking for? Where do we find the data in order to figure out which user we're getting? Where does that come through? So let's think about our super globals, right? What super globals do we have? There's 3 that we've been using. I'll give you one. Session is one of them. What's the other 2? What super global do we use to send data from the client to the server when we submit a form? Starts with a P. Post. What do we use when we're just creating a link and we're clicking a link and we want to get, somebody from a value that we've passed in the link? It's the opposite to post. Well, it's not the opposite. Nope. Session is for persistent data that we want to keep while the browser's open. Get, exactly, get. So that is what we're going to use. Get takes this parameter that we defined up there and adds it as a key to the get super global, and the value becomes 1, right? So that's where we're going to get it from. The thing is, though, that we have to keep in mind is this is user passed data. Can we trust it? Hells no. It's always hells no, right? Because the user is a dirty liar and we don't trust them. So we have to make sure that we sanitize this so that we don't have any issues. However, there's good news to that. We have, at this point, been a little bit more, overzealous with our validation and sanitization than we actually need to be. When we bind a parameter, it actually takes that value and casts it to whatever we decide the bind parameter should be. So if we say you are an integer, it's like, okay, it forces it to be an integer. If they were to write a SQL string in there or some cross-site scripting, what it would do is it would actually just convert it to the closest integer it could possibly be, which because it's not a number, it would just be 0. Just converts it to 0, which we kind of saw when we screwed up Avatar. Do you guys remember that? Yeah, we screwed up Avatar. Well, let's lay blame where it belongs. I screwed up Avatar, and so our Avatar link was 0, right? Because it didn't understand what it was, so it just cast it to a 0. So we don't need to sanitize the data. We don't even need to validate it's there because we created a link to it. If that link is broken for some reason, the user damaged it. They modified it. So whatever horrible experience they're going to have after that point is their problem. It's their fault for touching it in the first place, right? So that's the way I look at it. So we don't need to do much validation. What we do need to do, though, we need to include our connection script so that we can connect to the database. So that will allow us to connect to the database, and then we can go ahead and actually retrieve some data. First, we need to create our connection. So it's con equals connect, like so. There's our connection variable. Now we'll write a little bit of SQL. Select star. In fact, this SQL we're about to write is the exact same SQL we wrote in index with one added feature, a where clause. That's the only difference. Otherwise, it's literally the same one. So post ID as ID. So now let's copying and pasting from post. Let's move to the next line because we're going to run out of space. Join users on post dot user underscore ID equal to users dot ID. So there's our join. And then we'll add a where clause. Post dot ID is equal to colon ID because we're going to bind that parameter there. Now this isn't in here. We didn't actually update the updated at date in my notes, but we should do that as well. So right after this post dot as ID, I'm going to put a comma, and I'm going to do post dot updated at as updated at, and then I'm just going to put from on the next line, like that. So I'm selecting 3 fields, right? Well, I'm actually selecting more than 3 fields. I'm selecting everything. Then I'm modifying post ID to just be the ID column and post updated at to be the updated at column. And that will basically blow away any predefined values that got set when the merge happened between users and posts. Once we've done that, we can go ahead and do the regular steps that we need to do. So once we're done defining our SQL, what is usually our next step? Do we execute? No. Too soon. Do we bind? Yeah. Do we bind parameter yet? Or is there a step before that? Oh, yeah, Shane's on the right track here. That's no worries. Yep, we have to create a statement. How do we create the statement? I'll write the variable. So statement equals. That's right, con prepare. And what argument do we give it? The only real variable we have currently on the page. There we go. SQL. So that prepares the SQL, and what that actually does is it makes it so that this placeholder that we see here is waiting a value, right? Whatever value we give it will be a literal value, so it's not going to get accidentally interpreted as part of the MySQL statement. Then we can go STMT, and now we can bind our parameter, give it the location of the placeholder, pass $get ID unfiltered right directly into it, because we're also going to cast a PDO param int, which will basically say, hey, if you're not an integer, you are now 0. Now we can execute. And then last but not least, I want to grab the record we affected. How do I grab the record we affected? First of all, let's choose a variable name to store it in. What should we call the variable? What are we doing? That might be the best question. What are we currently doing based on the code? That's right. Yeah, we're grabbing the post. So what's a good name for that variable that we're going to store that post in? How about just post? Does that work for you? No, it's totally fine. All right. So how do I get my post? Touchpreet, how would I get my post? We've done all this step. We've got to our execute. What is our last little bit? I'll give you the first part. I'll give you one letter of the next part. Fetch. That's right, fetch. Not fetch all. Why would we not want fetch all? We just want one, that's right. There we go. We have fetched our post. And not only did we fetch our post, we also fetched the user associated with that post. So we have both pieces of data with us right now. This is where things are going to get interesting. So in our index page, all we're doing is taking a look at a preview of each of our posts, right? 200 characters of that, and that's it. If they want to go read the entire post, they click read more, or they click the link for the title, and off they go to the show page, and that's where they can actually take a look at it, right? When they get to the show page, we said that post is a parent and has many children. What is post children? So this post has many blah as the children. That's right, comments. So we should actually pull in the comments because we're going to display them on this page. So when the user comes and reads the post, they're going to hit the comments section, read the comments, post their own comment if they decide to, or move on, right? So that's what we're going to give them the ability to do now. So we're going to write another SQL statement underneath here, and this one will be get the comments. Yashin. No, it's not BIME parm. I'm thinking of food. So it's BIME param. Yeah. Yeah, it is not BIME parm, it's BIME param. A little less Parmesan, a little bit more code. You know who's got a good parm sandwich right now? Burger King.
Really?
Yeah, it was a hard one to say, but it was good. It was good. That's where we're going after work. She's not listening. All right, so now we're going to write our SQL statement. $SQL equals, I love how that rhymes. $SQL equal, I'm going to write a rap song. Select star comments dot ID as ID from comments. So we're going to select the star. We're going to select comments.id, which should tell you right off the bat that we're about to do another join, right? So we do have an option. What? I don't need a number line. And his graph looks like a little bit like he was drawing a Mario water world. Had like bubbles and stuff in it. All right, here we. Oh my God, this guy has like used the chalk down to a nub. I quit. All right. So we could join comments to the post. We could actually write, and you know what? It's better just to show you instead of trying to write it on the board. Don't write this. Just watch what happens. So I've got my users, and I want to get all my comments and join them in with it. So I'm going to left join. And I have to left join because if I just singular join, I will only get one comment. But you got to remember, our post has multiple comments, right? So I have to left join comments on post.id being equal to comments.postID. Okay? What that's going to do is it's going to find all of the comments, and it's going to merge them into the row. Not quite. It's actually going to create a row for every single comment with the same data. So let's go ahead and var dump that. We might as well do fetch all because there's going to be many rows. So we'll var dump $post. So here we go. We have an array. This is the first. This is all the same data though, right? So string 1, the name of the title of the post is qui hic minus. The next one is a different title this time. Why is it a different title? I have 2 in here. Oh, right, because title is actually getting overridden by the comment title. That's why. Because post has a title, comment has a title, so one's overriding the other. That's totally fine. But basically what it did was it created 2 rows because of the comments. The post data is going to be all the same. The user data is going to be all the same, right? The problem is now, though, is now I have multiple rows because that's what left join does. There's no way, at least not easily, to take all the comments and add them to the row as an array that then we could just go look at, right? So unfortunately, in this scenario, we can't join our comments in. Have you guys done a left join in your SQL class? Cool. So you kind of had a rough idea what was going to happen? Yeah. So instead, it's actually cheaper for us to just run another SQL statement. It makes a little more sense. So we're going to select from, oh, I already did from comments. From comments, join users on comments.userid being equal to users.id because a comment is associated with a user. And that's the end of our SQL statement. Nope, sorry, that's a lie. That's not the end of our SQL statement. Where post.id equals, and guess what? We don't have to bind this time. Do you know why? We already did it, right? This should be secure, valid data that we can just use, right? So we'll add a couple of little, I hate it when you do that and it just like shoves everything over to the left. And then we'll just go $post, square brackets, ID, because we can actually grab it right from the row. I'll get rid of this var dump as well. And the only reason we can do that is because I can trust that data, because I have already retrieved the post. I already sanitized the get variable. I know that that post record is pure and it's okay for me to use it. So I can pass it in without issue and not have to worry about the data that's inside of it. If you're populating a where clause with any user supplied data, you have to bind the parameters so that you're securing yourself, right? Because they could just put whatever the heck they want in there and you want to make sure you protect yourself against it. Because this whole SQL statement is basically secure and fine, we don't need to go through the whole hassle of binding parameters and preparing and executing. We can get away with just writing one singular statement. So it'll be $comments equals $con query $SQL, and we'll chain fetch all because there'll be more than one comment. So now the only downfall to all of this is we have no real way to see it. Right now we have posts and comments. We could var dump both and go look at them, right? But we're actually going to write out our HTML and look at it within our HTML. There are some issues with that because we once again have this like multi-class thing that gets built by Bootstrap, which is a little tedious to type out. But we got time. Like we're actually ahead of all the other groups. Anybody else still writing that out? I just want to scroll down a little bit. No? Okay, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. First, let's include And you're welcome to copy and paste because this will be the exact same. We're going to include the header and the footer. And I am going to cheat a little bit here. While I'm on the row, I'm just going to hit Alt, Shift, and down, and then replace the word header with footer. And then my stuff's going to go in the middle here. It's too bad we didn't get there, but with the first time I taught PHP, and I remembered recently that it was web students, so they had some web development a little bit before. So we kind of hit the road already running, right? Because they already knew what a request was. They had worked extensively with post, get, and sessions, so they understood that concept. Many of them came from PHP as well because they had done it before they went to college. So it was kind of easy to just kind of get going. When we were finished our project, you know how we have these multiple index files? We had no index files. We had one. You entered through the main page, right? And then every request you did after that got parsed through a router, and it would pull the view, like the view logic. So everything that creates the actual display, it would pull it into the page for you on every request. It was beautiful. It was so awesome. I did post a link to that recently. So I think I posted it in your resources. So if you guys ever want to check it out, feel free. And there's like lessons and walks you through how to do it as well. Okay, article. That's what we're going to put in here. I don't know why I chose an article, but why not, right? And we're going to give it a class of container. You can just write article.container and hit tab, and then that will just populate it for you. So our article is going to have a header inside of it, and that header is going to have a class of mt-5. So it looks like this, header.mt-5. Once you do that, you can hit tab, and it will create it with the class inside of it, which makes writing HTML a little quicker. mt-5, yeah, like MT5. I used to be a bartender. I've done 26 jobs in my life, by the way. I used to be a bartender, and I had this regular, and everybody called him MT Beer. Because he'd like freak out if his beer was empty. He liked me though, because his beer was never empty. We're gonna put an H1 in there. No class on that one. That H1 has no class. And then we're gonna use a little bit of PHP. So I'm gonna let you guys do this time. I want you to spit out the post title in that spot. So output the post title underneath the H1. So you're going to want to use an inline echo statement. And then why don't you, once you're done, post it to Slack so that I can see that you understood what you were doing. So I'll move Slack over a little bit so you can see the H1 here on this side. So you're going to output the post title. So first of all, what variable do you need? The post, right? And then you need to access the title that's in that post. So you're going to want to figure out, how do I output something, right? And kudos if you can do it with the shorthand version. Does anybody remember what we use for output? Like, what's the PHP function for outputting something? Yeah, echo. Yeah. But there's a shorthand way to write it so that you don't have to write PHP echo. You're on the right track. Yeah, try it. See if it works, and then post your answer into Slack. Class is more interactive when we have time. And just a hint, we've done it about 25 times, I want to say, so far. No dice? Okay, so echo, like Sashpreet said, is the way we output to the screen, right? When we're working in HTML, all PHP has to be encapsulated, right? Otherwise, it will spill over and not work, right? Okay, so what's a basic PHP set of tags look like? Like the opening and closing tag, what do they look like? They're on the page right now. PHP, right? So the easiest way to write this right now would be PHP echo, and then whatever you're going to put as your argument there to echo out. So we know it's $post, but that's not all. What kind of structure is post? Is it a string? It's not a string. It contains strings. There's many strings in there. It's an array. Yep. It's called an associative array, right? We call it an associative array because it doesn't just have indices, which is like 0, 1, 2, 3. It has, starts with a K, keys. So how do I get the title? What syntax brackets do I need? I need a set of brackets. What are they? Square, yep. And then do I give it 0? No. We don't have to use 0. We can actually use a key. So quotes. And what do we want to spit out here? I know you're on the right track here. Title, right? Cool. That's the long way to write it. How do we short form it? Yep, so if we remove this PHP and write the equal sign and get rid of echo, that's correct. That is now a shorthand echo statement. Yeah. So, just to be that friendly guy about the test, so important you know that. just in prep for the test. Last thing I want you guys getting caught up on is an inline echo statement. All right, we're also going to write a BR tag, which will basically, our title will go here, then we'll break, and then what we're going to do is output the author's name in small letters, right? So we're going to do small, like so, and then I want you to output the author's name. So now you already know how to do this, right? So see if you can output the author's name and then paste your answer in Slack. Their first and their last name. I'll move this over a little bit. That didn't sound good. It sounded like something like thunked outside. That's it that way. Should be nice and easy. All the hint you need is on the page. First and last name. And then when you're done, go ahead and post it into Slack. You can private message me, if you, which would work better if my Slack wasn't displayed on the screen. One way to unplug it. All right. Does anybody want to give it a go? You guys are all so shy. Like, I'm not putting that in Slack.
$user, same.
Yep.
Equal.
Okay. So $, you're saying $user. Where's that coming from?
Sleep deprivation.
Right.
Users, no.
No. Let's take a look here for a second. Let's look at all the variables we currently have defined.
Okay.
We have con, SQL, statement, post, comments. Right.
Name of some sort.
Yeah, let's go with first name. Okay, where am I doing the last name one? Am I doing it in here or are we putting it outside? Outside, that's right. And it's literally the same thing, but last underscore name. Why is first name and last name available to us under post, Shane? Why do we have first name and last name accessible under post? That's right, because it merges them together. Right. So we have those fields available to us. Cool. So you can and you can't. You would have to change the way we do it. The way we would have to do it we'd have to use string interpolation to do it. So depending on which way you like doing it, if you like that look and you think that's okay and you understand what's happening, then do that. Otherwise, just leave it with the two separated statements. Yeah. So PHP, not sure if you guys knew this, but PHP, it's called a recursive label because PHP, the acronym, means PHP. So like the first P is actually PHP. So it just recursively goes, right? PHP, hypertext preprocessor. So what a preprocessing language is, just out of curiosity, how many of you have heard of the CSS language called Sass? Yeah? So Sass so basically the idea is when we write CSS, just like HTML, it can get kind of lengthy and it's really annoying because you're just doing a lot of duplicate stuff. CSS now has variables, but at one point it didn't. But you can't do things like loops. There's no functions. There's no if conditions, right? Nothing like that exists in CSS. So somebody created a pre-processing language called Sass, which is CSS with programming, right? So now you can do functions, loops, whatever you want, if conditions, tons of different things, right? In this pre-processing language. Any of you heard of Jade, Pug, or Hamel? Blade is another one. Twig? No? So those are all HTML pre-processing languages because, my God, you hit a point in your career where you're like, I'm not writing another line of HTML. I absolutely refuse. So you learn these pre-processing languages that make writing HTML way less painful, right? Because, for example, Hamel, one of my most favorite languages, doesn't have closing tags. So you just literally write out the opening tag and it auto-closes itself. Yeah, so you don't need to write any closing tags. It also allows you to do if conditions in line. It allows you to write the programming language you're working in line, and it will just interpret it. But they're called pre-processing languages. The reason why they're called pre-processing is because there's this pre-compilation step before it sends the response to the browser, right? The browser can only interpret HTML. The browser cannot interpret PHP. It doesn't even know what it is. It knows the PHP extension, but if you gave it raw like PHP, all it would do is literally print the PHP out to the page, which isn't what you want, right? So there's this pre-compilation step where when we send our request, Apache takes a look at our PHP, it compiles it, pre-compiles it, and then sends a beautiful HTML response to the browser, right? It's this pre-processing step. Same thing with Sass, Hamel, Twig, Jade, all those guys, does the same thing. Does this pre-compilation step where it turns it into perfect CSS or perfect HTML and then sends that off to the browser. So PHP, its whole purpose was always meant to be this, where we can actually write code, like programming code, right in line with our HTML. Because the whole idea was to make our HTML easier for us to do, right? I'm teaching a static HTML class on Saturdays and Fridays to people in my community, right? And my Friday class was turned into like HTML for seniors, which is kind of interesting. They're actually pretty good, which is really interesting. I have one lady that's probably about 65, and she's just she's up there. Like she's just totally with it and gets it and stuff and building her website, right? But like I have one other lady, she comes from COBOL. She used to program COBOL, right? Which is like, you can complain about Java, but until you program COBOL, you get no say in that room. That kind of language, it's really difficult. So she, her first thought, the second we're writing HTML, because we're writing the head, right? And we're duplicating it across multiple pages. And so her first comment is, why do I have to write this every time? Right? Because in static HTML, you do. You have no choice. You have to write that head. You guys took HTML. Who was your teacher, Scott or Julie? Yeah, so you remember that. You're writing this duplicate code, and you're like, I'm a programmer. Why am I doing this over and over again? This is literally the worst thing I've ever done. So once you learn PHP, and you're like, includes, baby, like done once, right? Never again. You adopt that. So that's why PHP was basically created, because it was a way to make HTML less painful to write, because you could actually implement programming into it in order to do loops and stuff like that. But not just that, but also have a way to communicate with a database. So now you could create like a customized experience for other users just by reaching into the database and getting custom content. So PHP is a pre-processing language. If you continue in web, it's not the only pre-processing language you're ever going to touch, because a lot of dev shops want you to learn pre-processing languages because they're faster to code in. Right? It's much faster to code in Sass than it is to code in CSS, like 20 times faster, right? And it's much faster to code in Haml, Twig, Pug, Jade, any of those guys than it is to code in HTML. So much faster. So just keep that in mind, that this is a pre-processing language. So writing lists like this, where we have these as two separated statements, feels pre-processor-ish, as opposed to writing an interpolated string, right? Kind of separates the disciplines a little bit. That's just my personal opinion, though. All right, so we wrote that. Let's finish this off, and then we'll take a break. So that's the header. Let's draw a horizontal rule across the page. So that's hr.m-5 tab. That'll create a horizontal rule with a class of margin 5. Which basically pushes the content up and pushes the other content down. M-5. And then we're going to create a section, and this is going to be super annoying. Write section dot ml-5 dot d-flex dot flex-row dot justify-content-between dot, we're not done, align-items-center tab. Align items center tab. If you make a mistake, you can actually backspace, put the character back in, and the hint should come back up again. If it doesn't, I think you can force it with control space. That will also force the hints to come back up. At least you guys are getting to type it out. Yesterday, we just copied and pasted it from the lesson notes. That's because we were way behind. Yeah. All right, inside there, we're going to use, and this is awesome. Are any of you planning on doing web development in your co-op? Are you guys doing like web dev in your co-op? You might be. So this is a cool little feature. When you're building out like prototypes and that to show your boss, they don't necessarily want to see what image you're going to put in the prototype right away. They would rather you just build a placeholder. Well, there's a service for that, which is kind of handy. And it goes image source, https://via.placeholder.com. And the way the API works, you give it a slash, and then you give it the number for the width, x the number of the height, which is 200. And then we're going to give this image some class as well. Class equals mr-4 and image-fluid. And what image-fluid basically does is it doesn't care how big the image is. It will actually make it 100% of its parent. So whatever it's sitting inside, it will just automatically flow to the size of the container, which makes it easier when you're like dealing with your page going from mobile to desktop to tablet, because it rescreens the image, like resizes the image for you. And then in that same block, we're going to add a paragraph tag with no class. And we're going to output $post content. So quite a bit there. After that, hr.m-5, create another horizontal rule. And then we're going to do a p.ml-5, which is going to create a paragraph tag with a margin on the left-hand side of 5. And this is just going to be a link. It's going to be the ref is going to be interesting. So we'll just write out the link. The link is return to archives, ... So you might forget, but way back in like week 2 or 3, we wrote our config file, right? And our config file has our normalized paths. So whenever we're including a file, we use root, because it basically sucks us back to the root of our application, starts from there, and then we build our path where we need to include our file. That's called an absolute URL. If we were to do it with relative, we would be using the dots, right? 2 dots means move up a directory. 1 dot means the current directory you're in. A slash means start at the root, but it's not the root we want to start at, because it's actually the root of the whole application, which would be out of our lesson files and all the way back to the www directory, which is too far. So we create this normalized path in our config file that basically says our root is the lesson 5 folder, right? It's the comp 1006 lesson 5 folder. That's the root of our application. But we had to predefine that in our config file. We also predefined something called base path, which is for navigating, right? Anytime we're navigating with anchor tags, we need to use our base path. So in this spot right now, we have to obviously use our base path. And we use the echo statement because we're actually echoing out the text that's stored inside the base path. And then all we're doing is going back to post. And the good news is this is all public. There's no authentication factor in here whatsoever because it's all public data. All right. Once you've done that, we'll jump back to our page, see our post, see the return to archives link, see all our nice styling and everything. And we'll take a nice 10-minute break and then come back and write our comments. Anybody still typing that out? Just a couple? Sure, no worries. I will wait. So one thing to note is we're not iterating through anything because we have a singular row, right? So all we do is access the data directly. The thing I love about this particular file is we get to see both scenarios. We get to see the scenario where we fetch a singular record, and we're also going to get to see how we work with data when we fetch all of the records as an array, where we have to actually iterate through it, right? So the cool thing, that winds up all in one file, so you can use that as an easy reference. Anybody still typing? All good? Nice. Jump over to our browser, hit refresh, and undefined index ID on line 20. Why do we post ID? Yeah, that should be correct. Why wouldn't that not be correct? post.I as ID would override it. Post.updated at. Oh, I see why. Because this needs to be actually post_ID because it's on comments, not posts. We're not even looking at posts in this SQL. You're not the only one that's tired. I'm tired too. So it's actually comments.post_ID. Sorry about that. The reason why we know that is because post isn't even being referenced in this. We didn't reference post in the SQL statement, so there's no way to select anything from it. We would have had to select or join it or do something. So once you made that change, I'm going to save mine. Alt-Tab, Control-R. Stop being a liar. You know, if you'd like hammer on the refresh button, right? Eventually it works. So that's what's supposed to happen. This time it's on line 20, which is the same spot. Still having an issue with post ID. Oh, yeah, that's because of that part. Select post.id as ID. Yeah. Okay, so I guess we'll take a look at post and see what, see where the problem is? What's the issue? No, it should not. What should it be? Just fetch. Yep. So I'm literally saying, hey, grab the ID from that array, that big nested array. That does not work. Bam.
I still have an error on line 13.
Okay, we'll have to take a look at that on the break here. All right, cool. Let's take a break. If you have any issues, please come up and I'll help you. Oh, yeah. No, Steam is my serious waste of time at all times. All right, we're going to build a comment section. So right now in our page, if we look at it, we have our blog post, but we want to put all our nasty comments from our users underneath. And I've generated all these comments. They're not funny. It's just basically clips from Alice in Wonderland because that's what the Faker library used. But so there's a whole bunch of them. In fact, we have 50 posts. We have, 30 users, 50 posts, 300 comments divided, and they're just randomly assigned. So I don't know how many, I think there's 2 comments under this first post. So we're going to do some more of this crazy syntax stuff that we have to do here. Underneath article, create a couple of spaces. And we're going to do another hr.m-5 tab. Create a horizontal rule. And then we're going to only show the comments section if there are comments. If there's no comments, there's no reason to show the section. So we're going to show the section if there's comments. So we'll use the same logic that we do for error handling, which is if count $comments is greater than 0, right? And then we'll put the closing end if statement down here. So if there's comments, we're going to show this stuff. And again, this illustrates how PHP is a preprocessing language. We get to be able to create conditional HTML. If this thing fails, then we don't show the HTML. If it passes, then we show it. So we're going to create a dot. This is going to be interesting. Dot container hashtag comments tab. So it's dot container hashtag comments, and that will create a div with a class called container and an ID called comments in Emmet. So dot container hashtag comments. Currently trending on Twitter. H2 comments. With all the hashtags that you write in HTML, I'm really surprised Kim Kardashian's not a web developer. This is going to be a .mt5, which will automatically create an empty div that is 5 down. Not as funny as Kim Kardashian. We're going to create a UL dot list group, and I'm going to stop there and let you catch up because I think I'm going pretty quick. List dash group, yeah. List. We're basically going to display each comment as a list item, right? Because it kind of makes sense from a semantic point of view in HTML. It is a list of comments that relate to this post, so it makes sense. I know we don't really get into much about semantics here. We're going to create a PHP. Actually, you're going to tell me what we're going to create here. I'm going to create 2 opening and closing PHP tags, and my code's going to go in between here. So let's take a look at what we're doing, right? Let's think logically here for a second, those of us that are awake. We are going to deal with comments, right? Comments insinuates there is more than one, right? So because we're dealing with comments, and we know that our comments that came back from the database are what structure? Is it a string? Is it an associative array? Is it one row? It is an associative array, but not the comments is not. Comments is actually just a standard array. Each element inside of it, though, each list item is an associative array. So yeah, so we have an array, right? And we want to do what with that array? So that we can pop off each row and look at it. What's the PHP function we use to go over an array? So let's take a look at our iterators that we have available to us. We have while loops, right? We could use a while loop. That would be super complex and annoying because we'd need to know the length of the array. Same reason why we wouldn't use a for loop, right? Because again, we would need to know the length of a array. Do while is just why. And what's that leave us? Yes, for each, that magic PHP function that doesn't seem to exist anywhere else. So let's do a for each. And our for each receives, well, it's not really an argument. It's kind of weird because it's not really a function. I don't know what you would actually call for each. It's not a function, but it does take things. It takes like parameter-like things. The first argument it's going to take, we'll call it an argument, is the array. So that's the first piece it's going to take. It's going to take the array. In fact, it's so much not a function that you can actually put a space between the for each and the brackets. That's how much it's not a function. The second thing it takes is, it's almost like aliasing. As $, comment. And then we need to make sure we put that colon at the end of that line. In the last piece of the PHP down here, we're going to add the end for each, which closes it out for us. So, out of curiosity, what does this do? This statement. Kind of. It's going to iterate over a list. Yeah. So it's going to iterate over the list. It will. It doesn't by itself. All it does is iterate through the array, take each item in the array, and what does it do with that item? It's going to take each item in the array, and it's going to pass it into this comment variable. Now, inside the block, because that's what essentially we're in, we can use that comment variable to be able to display whatever we want in there. So for each is really kind of handy because for each will only iterate for the length of the array. Once it runs out of list items, it will stop. So we don't need to count the array because it handles that for us. Underneath the hood, for each is just a for loop. That's all it is. This just makes it more convenient for us. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to say, cool, you're going to take an li dot list group item. So it's going to take a list group item, which is an li, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going to go in here. First is our title, which is h5.mb-4. And in there, we're going to echo out our comment title. That's what we're going to do in there. And then out of the comment title, we're going to list the author, just like we've done before. Actually, I'm going to put that on the next line just because it's going to get really hard to read. There we go. And of course, I run out of room. I'm going to go down one level. Hopefully, you guys are all young. Now it fits on one line. A little harder to read, but just squint. It's good for your eyes. Oh, I wrote this small outside of the H5. This small actually needs to go inside the H5. I'm just going to highlight it, press Alt, and press up, and it will literally move up. And then I press Tab and tab it in. So Alt, up, and then Tab. So highlight it, then hold Alt, no other character, Alt and up, and it will move it up. Alt down will move it down. Alt left and right, no idea. Haven't tried them. Actually, I'm going to try it right now. Does nothing. Just deselects it. All right, under my H5, we're going to do an HR, but this time just a blank HR. I'll just create a horizontal rule for us. And then we're going to add another one of these annoying divs. .ml-5 .d-flex .flex-row .justify content between .align items center. I'll wait for you to get that in there before I hit tab. No worries. And all of those are bootstrapped, by the way. And you can actually find that if you go to getbootstrap.com and click on documentation, there's like a components section which shows you the different types of components you can create. And then there's also the layout. So if you click on layout, it shows you these things, like what dflex is actually doing is creating a flex box. Flex row tells it which direction to go into. Justify content between is a flex box property that basically says put all my stuff center, but put spaces evenly between each item. And align item center is a horizontal centering. I'm going to hit tab. And we're going to have another image in here, but this image is going to be the avatar. So we can actually pull that right directly from the comments if we actually put it in a PHP tag. Comment avatar. Because we merged the comments with the users, we have the avatar available to us. And then we're going to add a few classes to this. So this is going to be class equals image fluid, image thumbnail, MR-2, which is margin right 2. And then I'm going to add a style tag as well that gives a max width. Nope, of 150 pixels. Why am I doing that? Oh, right, okay, because you have to in order to do a border radius, because we're going to make it a circle of 150 pixels. So that'll basically turn it into a circle. And then because that's literally basically it, except for the P tag that we need, I'll write the P tag underneath it. And we're going to use that substring thing again so that we only show a partial amount of the comment. So substring, $comment, comment. Don't like doing that. I really hate it when I name fields the same name as I name the table. I try to find ways around it, but sometimes there isn't a way. Comma 0, comma 150. So we'll only show 150 characters. And then we're going to add an ampersand helip. Ooh, haven't done that in a while. What that actually produces is the 3 dots. So instead of you writing the 3 dots, you get to write 7 characters to produce 3 dots. But it means something. It actually has semantic meaning. I don't know what a helip is in reading. I think it just means like it's like an extended pause or like an implied pause. And then we can write our link. So it's an A tag. Did you say uh-oh?
Yeah.
Which is a base path, comments, show.php, question mark, ID equals. Make sure you put that equal sign in there. $comment, square ID. And then the link is literally more. That's it. That's comments. After that, we'll write our page to display full comments. We have pagination, but we might not get there. I'm not doing pagination with Monday's class because there's not a chance we'll get it even close to done. But if you want to add pagination to your projects, though, in that write-up for this lesson for today, there's a full write-up on pagination. Also on the algorithm, because pagination actually requires an algorithm in order to calculate the number of page buttons you need. And there's a full write-up on how to do that. Actually, I feel like pagination is more important than creating another stupid show page. So, stop typing for a second. We are going to get rid of the substring and just show the whole comment. And we're going to get rid of this link. And just do that. Because I feel like pagination makes more sense for you to know and understand because you will encounter that more often than not. Plus, it makes your database calls a lot more efficient when you're limiting the amount of data that you're pulling back than it does to do another show page. Do you want me to copy and put this into Slack as a reference point? You certainly can. So it's our if comment Check and make sure you have this colon at the end of that line.
Oh, I misspelled it, so I'm pretty sure that's what did it.
How did you misspell if? Did you spell it phi?
I
Do you know what's really annoying? In bash scripting, an if condition begins with if and ends with phi. It's really annoying. I'll scroll down a little bit just in case some of you are missing some of that stuff. You should have an end if at the bottom here. Don't forget that. But I'll also copy it. Jump into Slack. Remember, if you copy from Slack, it's very important you download it because Slack adds in some very bizarre characters. But if you download it, it should be fine. There it is. You might have just got all my PHP it is copied. Did I just get all of your stuff? No, I got PHP. Miraculously, it worked. All right. Are we ready to go look at this? Let's go look at it. Just refresh the page. There's our comments with our derpy people. It's Alice in Wonderland quotes, just because that's what Faker produces. And we can see, I don't like this though. There's the title of the comment, and then there's like the name right next to it. There should be a dash in between here and here, right? Because it kind of just runs together. So let's go create a dash. So we'll scroll up a little bit. It's right next to this thing. Just come right underneath title, and we're going to create NBSP, which stands for non-blank space, NM dash, which I have no idea what it stands for, and then NMBSP. So we're creating a non-blank space on each side and a dash, but it's not a normal dash, it's actually a long dash. So just this on line 63. All right, ready? We go back to our browser, hit Control R. There's now a nice dash in between each one of them. And if you go to back to your archives and click on any other user, you should see comments. And I think one of them doesn't have comments. Maybe it's the third one down. No, it has comments. Check the fourth one down. It has comments as well. Yeah, they all have comments. All right, ready to add navigation? And why not, right? So we're gonna, basically right now, if you look, we have 50 blog posts on this page, which is actually, there's two reasons why that's bad. One, a user won't do this. They won't scroll through 50 blog posts because they just want to see, you know, the quick 10 that you have on the page, usually the most relevant 10 based on the date. So if you have them divided up into chunks of 10, it's a lot easier for the user to consume that than it is for them to scroll endlessly forever, because they won't. So we want to chunk it into 10. That's the user experience side. The good programming part of it is that it is more efficient and less time consuming for you to pull 10 posts from the database than it is for you to pull all 50 posts, right? 50 posts takes longer to pull. So if we pull only 10 posts, then we are actually making our database query a lot more efficient as well, because we're only grabbing what we need. However, there's a little bit of logic behind this, because we have to write an algorithm that literally pulls the 10 posts for this page and makes sure it grabs the next 10 posts for the next page. Did you guys learn about offset, limit and offset inside your relational database class? Did you guys use limit? Yeah. Did you give it two values? One is where to start from, one is where to end? Cool. So you already have the first part of our algorithm, which is the database query we need to write in order to pull the correct number that we need. However, we need to calculate the offset and limit, right? So that's our next step. We'll just work right through and then we'll leave early, right? Make sense? Is that good, or do you want to break? Yep, no worries. You go for it. So the three pieces we're actually going to wind up needing, I wrote it down as we need three key ingredients. One, a query param telling us what page we're requesting. That's the first thing. We need to know what page that we want, right? So in order to do that, though, we're going to have to figure out how many pages we need. A limit offset in our SQL query that will only retrieve a subset of rows. That's number two, and a navigation element that would allow us to move from page to page. So we need those three pieces in order to make pagination work. The algorithm for defining our limit and offset is actually pretty simple. You start out with the number of posts that you want to show on a page, right? So let's do that first. So we're going to come down here, hit enter a couple of times, adding wonderful pagination, like the ballers we are. There you go. So step one, how many posts do we want to show? So we'll create a variable. That way we can change it if we ever want to. I'm going to say 10 posts. This variable is important because our algorithm, go away, Siri, stop it. Stop writing what I'm saying. Jeez. It was literally going, this is where a variable is important because blah, blah, blah. Anyways, this variable is important because it's going to define one of the key ingredients to our algorithm. If we change this variable, it shouldn't mess up our algorithm. Our algorithm should correct itself, right? So the number of pages we show will definitely be based on this variable, which makes sense. So next we need to calculate our offset. Our offset is basically a calculation between the page we're currently on and the number of posts we want to show. So if we're on page 2, our offset should start 10 posts in, right, and show the next 10 posts. If we're on page 3, it should start at post 20 and show those posts, right? So we got to make sure it shifts like that. So we're going to say $offset is equal to the number of posts multiplied by brackets the current page minus 1. And we've already got a error. Actually, we have 2 errors. The first error we have is that we're writing this on the wrong page. That's the first error. And then the second error is we never define current page. So that's the second error. I'd like you to copy these 3 lines that you've been writing. Okay? Cut them. Hit Control X to cut them out. Save your page. Open up postindex.php, which makes sense so that we're not on show.php. Press a couple of lines and paste it there so that it's just below this post fetch. There we go. And right above the number of posts, we will create our variable current page, which will be equal to right. We need to be a little smart about this. So we're going to take the page that we're currently on from the query parameters, which means it'll be in the URL, right? I don't want to run, oh no, I guess I don't actually care because it would happen to the current user. Yeah, I don't care, never mind. We're gonna do get ID. If they write cross-site scripting or anything in there, it only affects them, so I don't care. I want to either grab the ID or I want to set it to page 1. So either I'm on page 1 or I'm getting the current ID. So that's the first chunk of our algorithm. The next chunk we're going to write is get our data from posts. Uh-oh, we wrote all of this in the wrong spot. We need to move this up here, above the posts, which makes sense. And we're going to modify our query. We're going to make it bigger because it's not big enough already. Yes, or above connection. It just has to be above post no matter what. Yeah, because these variables are going to affect post. All right. So step 2, we're going to modify the SQL statement. I have to make sure I put this in the right spot. Yeah. We're going to add limit $offset, comma. Uh-oh, hold on. We need to move these guys down to here. There we go. Limit $offset and also the number of posts. So offset is where to start from inside. And this first time we execute, what number is this algorithm going to be equal to? What page are we on when we first start? Right? So number of posts is how many? Right? Bed math here, right? Brackets, exponents, division, multiplication, addition, subtraction. So is the multiplication going to happen first? No, the brackets are, right? So what value will this equal? 0. And number anything times 0 is what? Right? Okay, in the end we got there. So we're going to start off at 0, and we're only going to pull back how many pages? 10, right? We're going to pull back 10 posts. So I'm going to tab this guy in because he should have tabbed in on his own, but he didn't. So we're going to limit off that. Now we have one more other piece that I haven't talked about before. That's the order that we're bringing everything back in, because currently the order that we're working in is just willy-nilly, whatever happens to be in there. You know what? Let's save that. Let's save that for next week. That's next week's problem, right? It's just a happy little cloud. That's all it is. All right, if we go to our browser and we refresh, it's not going to look like anything changed except for your slider got a little bit longer because we only have 10 posts currently on the page. So that's great, but now we need to give people a way to be able to see other posts, right? They could edit the URL, right? You could totally edit the URL, add in a question mark, and say, what was the value that we gave that thing? Did we say it was ID? Please tell me we didn't say ID. That was stupid. Why did we call it ID? Let's call it page. That makes a lot more sense. We'll call it page instead of ID. So now if we go back to our browser and modify that to page equals, so we're on page 1, so let's go to page 2. And we should get a different starting blog post. If you go to page 3, you should get a different starting blog post. Page 4, page 5, and then last page 6, but page 6 should have no blog posts on it because there's only 50 blog posts. So we should only get 5 pages. Cool. Yeah. So that's awesome, but obviously navigating by the URL is an absolute headache, and we don't want to make the user navigate by the URL. Let's give them some navigation to deal with, because that would make things a lot easier. Make things a lot easier. All right. So our navigation we need to calculate, which is going to be tricky for sure. We're going to do it down here. Right. So this is the one thing I don't like, is that this has to happen this way, but it's kind of important. It's going to feel a little redundant. We're going to write a post count equals, because I need to know how many number of posts are on the database. in order to figure out how many pages I need, right? Because the number of posts in the database defines the number of pages that we're going to need in total. So I'm going to say $post count equals $con query. I'll just write the SQL statement right in here. Select star from posts. So that'll just select them all. And then I'll chain on a new function that you haven't seen called row count. And row count will literally return back the number of rows that we have in the database per post. It actually returns back the number of affected rows that this query affected. Then to figure out the number of pages, super simple algorithm. Probably the most simple algorithm you've ever calculated before. Number of pages is equal to ceil. Does anybody know the difference between floor, ceil, and round? So round, if I have a number, if I have 5.5, right? If I round, I'll write it out actually. If I round it, we'll write all three. If I ceil it, and if I floor it. Okay. If I round it, you guys did rounding in school, right? What will this round to? 6. Yeah, this will round to 6. If I ceil it, does anybody know what it will go to? No. No matter what, it will always go to the next number. So it will immediately go to 6. And if I floor it, it goes to 5. There's one more. Anybody know what that does? So that's absolute. Absolute, no matter what, will drop the 0.5. So it will be 5. However, it does one other thing. This is negative. Can't be. It will still be 5. You'll lose the minus sign. So no matter what, it does that kind of change. I'm sure there's good mathematical reasons for why you would use this. Mathematical, that's a new word. There's good reasons why you would use these. But the one we care about is ceil, because when our division happens, we want to make sure that we don't have one straggling page kicking around that's not getting accounted for. So we're always going to ceil. So we're going to write ceil, and not like the ceil. And then we're going to take, how would I calculate the number? How would I figure out how many pages I need? I realize at 9 o'clock at night, this is like just bordering rocket science. what would my calculation be? I do know the answer. Don't think I don't know the answer. Number of posts divided by 10, that is correct. So the post count divided by the number of posts. And now the reason is because post count is actually all the posts, and number of posts is the number of posts on the page, right? So I knew you were on the right track. I knew what you meant. So that should return back for 50 pages, 5, right? We get 5 or 50 posts, 5 pages. So that's good, but now we need to actually create the navigation element. And we're going to use some Bootstrap to create it. And it's not going to be the funnest thing in the world you've written tonight. It's not as bad as some of the stuff we've written, but it's pretty nasty. It's pretty hefty. We'll do it in 2 steps. The first thing we'll do is we'll write the buttons that create the page numbers. But we're not going to leave it there because that's not a great user experience. We're also going to do a next and previous button. Sorry, that way. Previous and next. Well, it depends on which way you're looking at me, right? So let's scroll to the bottom of the page. Unless you're still typing that stuff out. Was anybody typing that out? Okay, good. We'll scroll to the bottom of the page. And we're going to write this. Where are we writing this? Oh, cool. We're going to create a brand new little block down here, HR, just like that. We're going to write a nav. We're going to give the nav a class of MT-5. and an area label. No, I'm not. I'm not doing the area label. Sorry, we're not going to be accessible. I apologize. We should be, but we're not going to be. We're going to create a UL, but we'll do it in the nice Emmett way. So we'll do UL dot pagination, which is a fun word to spell. Justify content center. Like that. And by the way, if you accidentally lose your hint, you can hit Control Space and it will bring your hint back. So then you can complete it. So if you lose the hint, don't freak out and be like, oh my God, now I got to write the whole thing over again. Just hit Control Space and the hint will come back up. Adam's terrible, that's why. Use VS Code. Adam used to be like, so when Adam first came on the scene, I was like, yes. Do you guys have Scott for anything? Scott McCrindle? You guys, yeah. If you have Scott, hands down my favorite teacher ever here. Just super fun guy, very friendly. He dresses up like the guys from Top Gun when he comes in and does one of his lessons, and he makes it relate to Top Gun. He brings in a toaster and makes you toast. Does all these really cool things, right? But he's worked at the college for like 15 years. And he's got like his lesson plans down pat, so you can have some fun with them. Anyways, where the hell was I going with that? Scott introduced me to Adam, and I was like, yeah, Adam's pretty cool, because I was using Dreamweaver. God, right? I still get eye twitches from that thing. So he introduced me to Adam, and I was like, yeah, I'll try this out. I'm a nice, fresh developer, right? So I tried out Adam, and I liked it, and I thought it was okay. And then I started working at G-Shift, and the senior dev's like, what is that piece of crap you're using? And I was like, it's Adam, it's great, it's awesome. And he's like, no. He uninstalled it off my machine, my senior developer, and he installed Sublime. And he's like, use that, that's what we use. It's a man's browser. It's a man's IDE. So he emasculated me too. So we start using Sublime. I fell in love with Sublime because there's all these extensions and stuff, and I made it my own. I have my own themes. So when VS Code came out, the developers for VS Code were like, we love Sublime. The only thing we don't like is I can't do C programming on it. I can't do compiled programming. I want to be able to do compiled programming. And I don't want to pay for it. That was the other issue, because Sublime's to pay for. So they created VS Code, and it's kind of the best of both worlds. So that's why I fell in love with VS Code. Adams basically stopped development. Like, they were developing it, and it was going to be the next kind of Sublime, but free. And then the developers just like screwed off, and now it's kind of just sitting there stagnant. So it sucks because you're losing all these other features that you could get. But if you have VS Code that's free, you will have nothing but bliss, right? So anyways, once you have that, hit tab, puts it in for you. You could see if there's an extension for Adam called Emmett, because that's what does this. And Emmett is available for TextMate, Sublime, a whole bunch of different ones. You can just download the Emmett extension. Yeah. All right, so I'll put my UL in. Now we're going to create we're going to create a iterator. So we're going to do, this iterator is different. This is not going to iterate over a for each loop, right? We're not going to do a for each loop because we don't have an array to work with this time. Instead, we're going to create a for loop. This is interesting. So it's for, and the way for loops work, I'm sure you guys have written for loops before, but the way a for loop works is you have your initializer variable first, right? The only good news is you don't have to define its data type, right? So this time it's just $i equals whatever initializer value you want, and we're going to start with 1 in this scenario. Then we have our condition check. $i is less than or equal to the number of pages that we calculated further up, semicolon. And then you have your function that you want to execute on each iteration, and our function is going to increment our I. An interesting thing that a lot of people don't know, oh, by the way, our closing tag is N4. A lot of things, something that a lot of people don't know, this is just a function call. It's just an expression that gets executed on every iteration. it can literally be whatever you want. You could actually execute a function there every single iteration. So for loops can actually be super powerful, like ridiculously powerful, because at the end of the day, this is just an expression, this is just an expression, and this is just an expression, and they all happen in a certain order, and that's literally all that's happening. What you execute in each one of those statements is totally up to you. So you can actually make for loops do interesting things. All right. In this block, basically it's going to iterate the number of pages we have, right? And we're going to use I as a way to label our buttons. So we're going to do an li dot page dash item. Oh yeah, that's interesting. We're going to have to drop that because we have to actually, the next little block we have to kind of write in PHP. We'll do that next though. Let's split those up. We'll keep it nice and simple first. A dot page dash link. And our page link is going to be question mark page equals, and a little bit of PHP in there to echo out the value of I. And then we'll again echo out the value of I as our label. And that's the basics of our navigation. Super, super basic. There's some things about it that aren't very good. One, it won't actually tell us what page we are currently on, which is not a good user experience, right? We should know the page we're on. Two, we have no way to navigate to the next page without clicking the page button. So the fact that we don't know what page we're on also makes that kind of annoying about knowing which page to go to next. Or previous. One of the key things I've been teaching my senior citizen HTML class is there's 3 important pieces you need to know for user experience when you're building web. Users need to know where they are, right? Because they get scared. So they need to know where they are. They need to know how to get back to home. Like no matter what, they need to be able to get back to the home page. So they need to know where they are currently. They need to know how to get back home. And they need to know how to get to where they've been or where they'd like to go. Okay? So the way we solve those issues is, one, we use titles on the page to tell them where they are, or indicators that show them where they are. So in this scenario, we'll light up the page number so that they can tell what page they're on. Okay? Home is a home button. We have a home button. We've solved that problem. Where to go and where to go back is solved by a previous and next button that we can use on the page, or you can also solve it with your navigation. So we're meeting all 3 expectations. That's not even just web development. That is every type of application you would develop ever for a user. You need to be able to make sure they know where they are and how to get where they need to go, right? That's super important. All right, let's go to our browsers. Refresh. Our nav is at the bottom. You should have these wonderful 5 buttons. If you click the button, it'll take you to the next page. Click the next button, it'll take you to the next page, and so on and so forth. Just keep kicking the buttons, and it keeps taking you to pages. All right, now let's add a couple of little features. One feature I want to add is basically to light up the button that we're currently on. So I'm on page 5, so page 5 should be lit up, right? So that way it tells the user what page you are currently on. So we'll do that by modifying this li class. I think it's the li class. Yes. And here's what the logic looks like. It's a little goofy. Let's write an echo statement in here. And we're going to write something called a ternary. And what a ternary is it's an inline if condition, basically. The idea is that you create a comparison, and then you write the true value on the left, and then you do a colon and the false value on the right. Have you guys written ternaries in any other class? So ternaries exist in almost every programming language, and somebody told me that they exist in Java, and you can write them in Java as well. So what I like to do is I like to write the syntax pieces that I need first. The set of parentheses for my condition, the question mark, which basically is the operator that says this is a conditional check, and the colon that separates my false and true values. Step one is our condition. Our condition in this scenario is going to be, does the current page equal does it equal I? So does the current page currently equal the page we're on, the page that we've iterated to, the button that we're creating? Because if the current page equals the button we're creating, then we're going to highlight this thing, right? So the way we do that is on this particular piece, we're going to say active if it's true. So that goes on the left-hand side of the colon operator, and null if it's false. And I'll write a nice little comment above this so that kind of helps you a little bit. So condition, true, false. That's how that works. And I'll even write what this thing is called. It's called a ternary. Yeah, I certainly can. There you go. Just make sure you don't copy and paste, download it and do it. Yeah. Alrighty. So once that's in, basically what's going to happen is if the current page is currently equal to whatever button we're currently trying to create, we're going to set a class of active. Otherwise, we're going to set it as a class of null. Okay? I'm going to jump back to my browser and show you basically what the result looks like. And nothing's happening. Why is nothing happening? Let me try it if I go to 1. So I have page 1. Okay, so if I go to post, it lights up. If I go to 2, I lose it. Pretty sure I wrote it correctly. Page item. So it's on the LI. Yeah, page item. It's not on the active link, is it? Nope. Current page is equal to $I. So as long as current page is equal to $I, then it's, oh, this is why. See how we have the 3 equal signs here? 3 equal signs means not only is your value the equivalent, but it's also the same data type. Because everything that comes back from the query parameter is technically a string, we're trying to basically say that this string number is equal to this actual integer, and those don't match. So we can solve it in 2 ways. Either we cast current page to an integer, or we just remove one of the equal signs, which makes it loosely equal, which is totally fine. And once you do that, Control R, now it's lit up. So if I go to 3, 4, 5, nicely lit. Did you drop one of the equal signs, Matt? Yours is just permanently stuck on 1? All right, let's finish these other 2 little pieces, and then I'll help you because we'll have some time. So the next piece I want to do is create a previous button and a next button, but we need to think about this. If I'm at the first page, should I be able to go back? No, exactly, no. So we need to disable the button, right? If I'm on the last page, should I be able to go next? No, so we need to make sure it gets disabled. So we're going to have to add a little bit of logic in to kind of handle those pieces, right? So the LIs that we're going to create are actually outside of this loop. So we're creating them outside of the loop. The first one we'll create up here, and it will be li.page-item. And it's going to have a link inside of it that is a.pagelink. And its name is going to be previous, or prev, if you want to use prev. Dot page-item. And then the A link was a.page-link. All right, for the A link, let's write the logic in there because there's a little bit of logic here. So it's still page equals, like that, right? Question page equals. And there's a little bit of PHP in here to define it, but basically the way it's going to work is it's the current page that we're on minus 1. Okay? And we're kind of being a little lazy here. We're not going to really care whether, like within the link itself, we're not going to care if it's currently on the first page and therefore the link shouldn't be able to go back. We're going to handle that actually in the LI by disabling the button from the LI. So once it's disabled, they can't click it anyways. So that way we don't have to perform logic in 2 places. So if we save that and look in our browser, we should have a previous button now. And if you click it, it should work. Yep, there it goes. 4, 3, 2, 1, and break our page. Yep. All right, let's fix it so we don't break our page. The next piece we're going to do is in this class, we're going to add another little bit of logic. And it's going to be a little obnoxious, but basically it's another ternary. So let's write out the ternary operators. And this condition is going to be if current page is equal to 1, so if it's the first page, then set the class to disabled. Sorry, add a disabled class to it. Hold on, that is in the wrong freaking spot. Oh, no, it's not because it's bootstrap. Right, sorry, it's bootstrap. And then this is null. So disabled, by the way, exists as an attribute for any type of element, HTML element, and it will actually disable the element from being interacted with. Bootstrap has their own disabled, which is a bit different because it actually affects the A-link inside of it, so that the A-link can't wind up being interacted with. So you're typing out this. Yeah. And then why don't, just before we go to the browser, highlight that whole LI and copy it. Come down here where we have the PHP N4 and add a couple of new lines and paste it in place, because the difference between it and the next is not a lot, just a little bit of an algorithm change, right? So the link, obviously, instead of -1 becomes +1 because we're increasing the page. And instead of the current page equaling 1, we actually need to make the page equal to the number of pages, right? So that current number of pages, num of pages, because that's our last page, right? You don't want to hard code 5, because if you hard code 5 and then you add more blogs, your next button just stops working after the 5th page. It doesn't work from that point on. No, it would stop at 5. Yeah, it's because you hard coded which page to stop at. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, it says previous here. We need to change next. That's totally true. So once you've done that, jump back to your browser, hit refresh. You should have a next button now. Previous should be unclickable, right? You can't click it anymore. We can click next, next. Notice both of them are working now. Everything is active across the board. Next, next, and now it's disabled. No, because actually, if you want to do that, Bootstrap has a visible thing inside of it. I don't remember because they changed it as of Bootstrap 3. So documentation. It's not called hide anymore. It's called visible. Somewhere in here. Maybe it's utility. There's clearfix visibility. There it is. It's invisible. So all you have to do is instead of disabled, you do invisible. And same with this one, you would just change it to invisible, like so. So in those ternary statements. And then you would go here, back to our page, and refresh, and it just disappears. But you also don't get the nice rounded corner because it literally just disappears off the page. Now if we go back to previous, that works. So I'll go back to page 1, and now previous is gone, right? So it depends on what you like. I kind of believe that you shouldn't make things hidden on a user. You should show it to the user. However, what I will say, if we have those enabled, one is still clickable, even though we're on that page. So I feel like that's the one thing I would add. Beside active, I would add disabled. So not only is it active, so it shows it up blue, but it disables the button so you can't click it. I'm hoping that's what will happen. I have a funny feeling it's just going to go gray and not be very attractive. Or whatever. So if we hit Control R, yeah, you see it just went gray on me. Let's fix that. Don't worry, we can fix that. Let's add a new style because it gives me a chance to tell you something I know. We're going to add a background color. And we're going to use Bootstrap Blue. And I know it off my head because it's James Bond is my best friend forever. 007 BFF is the color. James Bond is my best friend forever. The cool thing about that joke, my senior citizens got it too. So it like works across the board, dude. It's so generational. It's awesome. And then we're going to change the color to #FFF. Friends forever, Ferda. Anybody watch Letterkenny? Do you watch Letterkenny? I knew you watched Letterkenny. Ferda. All right, so now I don't know if that is the actual blue. See, this is what I love about Mac, because when I come down here, I just wind up opening random Mac apps every single time. I can't wait for my laptop. All right, so if I refresh, Control R. Oh, let's try Control Shift R. Oh, you see, it doesn't want to change. Haha, you think you're better than me? It's because it thinks it's more of a priority. So I'm going to add important and make mine more priority. This basically now says James Bond's my best friend forever, and I mean it. Oh, I hate you, Bootstrap. So they have an important that's overriding my important. Cheekiness, eh? Oh, I'm sorry. Well, there are ways. We can actually add a style tag, and we can override their disabled, and we can set their background color. None of this is important at this point. Yeah, at this point, it's just man versus machine. It's really all it is. Oh, we need a reporting in there too. There we go. Actually, we can even make it better because the way CSS works is the more specific it is, the more it actually gets applied, right? So if I make this nav.active.disabled, you don't get more specific, right? It's like now I'm targeting this thing. I'm personally being, intentional with it. All right, we ready? Matt's following along. He's like, damn you, Boots. I want to know why. Why are you not, like, you can see the CSS is in there. Yeah, it's literally, no, you see, it should be applying, actually. Did I apply it to the wrong one? Wouldn't that be not funny? No, style, background. So we have active style. Why don't we add one more class into the thing? Page item. So we'll do .page - item. Now it's super specific. Oh, you. If all else fails, right click, copy selector. Let's see what crazy selector it gives us. This is only going to work for that button. I'm done. I give up. I totally give up. You can't get more specific than that. That is so funny. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. No, I know why. Oh, because it's not the LI, it's the A tag. It's the link. Actually, we'll make it really super specific. So the immediate link afterwards. Yep, it was the link. Beat the machine. I'm John Henry. Definitely beat the machine. All right, that's literally all I have for you tonight. There's no more. Next week, we're going to do create and update and destroy, which might be optimistic, but we're going to try create, update, and destroy in one class. We'll likely only get to create. That being said, though, you should be able to do the CRUD for your project because we did all the CRUD for users. So it's all the same stuff. Plus the actual data for the projects. I did put this up to help people out. I did post a link as well in an announcement, but you can go to github.com/GCSMcKinnon, click on my repositories, click on Comp 1006. I put a link in the announcements and lesson 8. Lesson 8 contains the entire finished in-class project. So like everything we were going to do in class is currently sitting in there. So you can start with that as your base and then build from that. So just modify the posts and comments so it's your parent and child relationships. Get your stuff in there. It'd probably be actually easier to almost remove posts and comments and add in your stuff just because some of it's relative to post and comments, right? So, but that's a good starting base. All the notes are up to date, except for next week's notes. They need text in it. Right now it's just code. I'll fill those out this weekend though, but you guys should be good to go. The only other thing to note, the final. I was going to do a written and not a written, but like the stupid Blackboard test, right? And a practical. I am just going to do a practical. So it'll be 3 hours. It's group based. So you form a group of 4 people and you are going to do just CRUD, not even parent-child CRUD, just CRUD. And I'm going to give you the starting HTML and you're going to write your CRUD out. It will probably take you at least 2 hours to complete, maybe a little more. So I'll give you guys the full 3 hours for that. So that's the test. So practice doing CRUD, right? Practice just, even if you just do posts, right? Just figure out how we did post and write a simple CRUD statement so that you understand how to do CRUD. Okay? And that's it. Great. Have a good night.